You're live, Nina.
Welcoming us. Am I the only one that can't hear her?
Oh, we're live.
Yeah. We've been live for 30 seconds.
We've been live. We just been standing here.
Welcoming us. So
yeah, start talking. We're live.
Yeah, I read this quote that I thought was pretty powerful. And it's not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it's faced. So I'll read it again. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced.
Ooh. Ooh. Oh, we're starting heavy today. It's gonna be a good roundup. It's gonna be a good roundup. Nino, what's your interpretation of that? Holy cow, my mind just spiraled into 1,000 things.
Oh, right. I mean, it's fascinating. It's like, we always talk about where we focus our energy. That's the thing that's gonna grow. And we know that the nature of looking has an impact at the thing that is being observed. Like just being observed, it inherently changes the thing, and the looker. So how does that apply to running a yoga business? It's in so many ways, infinite ways.
I think I would add to that exact thing too, that like my experience as a coach has been, and look, these are the difficult coach conversations that we have. Like we have, from a coaching philosophy, we have a no BS policy, we call it. Like no bullshit. We've got to tell you what we see. We've got to tell you the truth. It doesn't mean we're always right or whatever, but like if we see something, we have to call it out. And that can be uncomfortable and difficult, but it's for exactly this reason, which is it's really common for an owner to just not look at something and it can be so obvious as a third party looking in. Like I'm not in your business. I'm not there in the day to day. I don't have any of the history with the team. I don't have the backstory in my mind. I'm not filtering anything through whatever everyone's filtering through. I'm just looking at it objectively. And sometimes it's like the most obvious issue that is just completely being ignored or not addressed or not literally not looked at. And that in itself, it hinders the business potentially, or it causes a lot of stress where it doesn't need to be or whatever.
I feel like this happens a lot with KPIs when we start coaching, and people will literally say, I just haven't wanted to look at the numbers. I'm just like, they're scared or they don't want to know. So
they're fine.
Yeah, they're fine. Or they haven't been paying themselves. And so it's like better not to look at it. Like that always kind of blows my mind because I think it's better to get real about it. So where's the path? Like, where's the gap? What can we do to close that gap? I mean, if you're not looking at it, you don't know, then there's no path forward, really.
Or even you don't know when you're succeeding.
Yeah.
Right? Like you might be crushing it somewhere. You're like, oh, I don't think we're doing that great with retention. And then you're like double the industry benchmark. You either way.
Or you think your problem is this, and we hear this a lot. I need more people. Well, no, you don't need more people. You need more people buying your intro and getting retained. And that's the issue. And it's what you said, Carol, about they just don't know. I mean, I was a little guilty of that early on, but in preparation, when we get a new client, one of the things we do in preparation for as a coach for the first call is go back and listen to the call recording from our discovery call, our free coaching call. And I've been listening to a lot of them lately. And it's interesting when Maria, who is our client success navigator, is talking to them and asking them about their numbers. It's almost nobody, it's so far in the ones I've listened to, which has been quite a few lately, it's like nobody declaratively says, yes, we have average of 50 first visits per month. We are getting 70% of them on our intro offers, and we are we have a 35% retention of membership. Nobody can declaratively say what their numbers are, which is it's like, well, oh yeah, we're doing pretty good. Or I think it's this. Oh yeah, we do really good at that. And let me tell you, when we get to that, when I hear that, I'm just like, yeah, you have no idea. And then when we actually start looking at their numbers, to your point, Carol, their minds are blown. They're like, oh, you know, and I think it is that avoidance is like, if you don't look at it, the pervert ostrich head in the sand, whatever you want to say, it's like, if I don't look at it, then I don't have to think about it, and I can just be ignorance is bliss. Because this is a human tendency too, is that because if you know, like you said, if you know there is a change that needs to be made and you just don't want to make the change.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather be like, oh, well, I didn't know that. And again, it is that ignorance is bliss, as opposed to, well, yeah, I know this is the exact problem, but I choose not to do it. As you always like to say, oh, one point at a time, like up from John. Okay. You know, we're going to do a roundup where I'm going to have duct tape on my mouth the whole time.
That's on trend. Do you have that breathing tape? That my TikTok's blowing up with that tape your mouth tape.
That would be.
I'm like, this isn't it's just fucking tape. Like, why is it $28? And tape your mouth, so what? So you breathe through your nose? Just breathe through your nose. Do some yoga classes. Hey, don't even get me started there.
So yeah. So
Josh?
Yeah. The other thing, Nina, with this quote that comes to mind for me was something we've talked about in the last couple roundups around, like, where your responsibility lies and where you can practice true acceptance of things. So, like, you're not responsible for the actual outcome in its entirety. And that's a really hard thing to accept as an entrepreneur, because all of entrepreneurial, like, culture will tell you the opposite of that. They'll say, you're always the problem. You have to take responsibility. You're the one that whatever, which there's a reason for that. It's not that it's untrue, but the actual, like, outcome of what happens, is not your responsibility. Doing the work, though, is. So I don't know. In there's an insinuation too. The thing you're not looking at is the thing that you're not working on. And the thing that you are looking at and working on, like, that's all you can do.
I used to always say in yoga class, you know, awareness is the first step to change. And so it's sort of in that vein. Then it was funny because actually I had a quote that I read in my IHP class at the end the other day, which was like kind of to me the second thing. And I was thinking in terms of how it applies at the business summit, but like I can read it really quickly here. The secret to every success lies not in what or even who you know, but in clearly seeing where you want to go and going. So it made me think of how you always say, you know, we have to see with clarity, very clear what it is, and then launching is everything, right? So you have to go in that direction. So we need awareness. We need to know where we're going, and then we need to take the first step to it, you know? So I don't know, just all kind of coming together in my brain.
It's true. It's so simple. There we
It
go.
is simple. It's super simple.
Well, let's wrap it up there. Go fix your business. We're good.
That part about letting go or not being responsible for the outcome, that's really powerful.
That one is a spin-off of what's the original quote again?
Not everything that is faced can be changed.
Yeah, that part.
Until it's faced. Right.
Right.
So
like, you have to face it to change something. Sure. So that's like the responsibility of,
guarantee.
You got to do the work, but not everything that you go after you're not going to win all the time. It's not going to be exactly the outcome that you think, but that's not actually your responsibility. You need the clarity, like Carol is talking about, to know what direction you need a target. You got to know what you're heading towards.
Right.
But there's other factors, there's other people, there's economy, there's like all sorts of other things going on. So to me, that's the true detachment part. But that's the yoga coming into the business side of things, that, like, you shouldn't accept failure. Failure is a tough word. So I'm just speaking simply. You shouldn't accept things to not be positive for yourself. But at the same time, you shouldn't allow your fear of failure or things not going your way to stop you from moving forward. And at the same time, the acceptance that like it's not totally in your control. As soon as there's any, even just very simply, right? As soon as there's any one other human involved, you're fucked. You can't control it anymore. I can't make Carol do anything. She's so mysterious. You saw her color things yesterday. We posted. No one can make Carol do something. No one even knows what Carol's doing.
Mysterious.
But as soon as there's another person, then their influence on the situation, their reaction, their decision. You're trying to sell something to a student. This is one of the things that we teach at sales in the sales boot camps and in general as well, is the non-attachment part too. Like whether someone says yes or no and you close the sale doesn't matter. Like it's not a failure if I have a conversation with Terry for 15 minutes. It's a quality conversation, human being to human being, about what Terry's trying to do as it relates to why you came into this yoga studio and how I can help you. And then at the end, whether she signs up or not, I don't have to be attached to that. Because it's not, I can't control it. I can't control Terry. It's not my job to manage her. My job to manage me. On the other hand, my fear of making myself uncomfortable, or that Terry might not like it if I ask her a question and try to talk to her, that's all within my control. That's me. So that's where the responsibility lies. This is a really good quote. There's like more depth in it than for how simple it is. I like quotes like that. Well, let me take us in another direction. Nothing about this quote at all. Actually, you know what? It is actually quite related to this quote. We had a question in the YC about HVAC systems. We've been talking about making humidity and having an HRV or an ERV and forced air versus radiant heat for a hot yoga studio, et cetera. And I think that this conversation is actually more pertinent to any yoga studio, regardless if you're going to be a hot yoga studio or not, than people realize, because it is a major factor in the environmental experience that you're offering. To relate it back to this quote, another one that we talk about in the YC often for years is the thing that you don't understand is the exact thing that you are risking being taken advantage of around. So you don't, yeah, right? Like you don't need to become an HVAC specialist and understand the specific pressure CFM of the blah, 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 blah. That doesn't matter. But if you have no clue what's going on with your HVAC system in your studio, when it's, especially a hot studio, when it's so fundamentally important to your operation and experience, that's risky. Because then what do you do? Like you're at the, what's the word? Whatever, you got to depend on the HVAC companies to understand what you're trying to do and to build it properly and to fix it properly, and that the prices are fair and that the system even makes sense, and et cetera, et cetera. And no shade on them, but often they don't know. They don't quite understand the environment you're trying to create. So it can create a lot of tension. The specific question, I made a longer video on this, maybe 20 minutes long or something. It'll go on YouTube pretty soon, and I'll link it into the YC here. It's just in editing right now. But the specific question was around an HRV, a heat recovery ventilator, which, here's your crash course. It's literally a box with two fans in it. One fan sucks air out of the room, and the other fan sucks air from outside and pushes it into the room. But all of that air passes by this little thin piece of metal, actually a bunch of them. So the hot air that's leaving preheats the cold air that's coming in as they pass each other. That's all that happens. It's a very simple mechanism. And to get one fully installed with ductwork and everything else is probably $20,000. So you can just go buy a small unit for $5,000 or something like that. But it's a good example of like, is it worth it to spend $20,000 on something like that? And it's a really tricky thing to answer. So I have a question for the group on this, being that you guys all understand hot yoga studios as well. But I think that the first thing to reconcile with things like an HVAC system in your hot studio is, what is the experience in the room supposed to be? Because there is a massive difference between OG Bikram yoga. It's 40 Celsius at 40% humidity, and I want it as consistent as possible. And I need enough oxygen that people don't feel lightheaded and sick, right? Because that's really where that comes from, not from heat, from oxygen. And I need to be able to turn the air over in the room in between classes so that it never stinks. Like that's one version of hot yoga. And then there's like, we're going to run it at 36 Celsius. I'll go with ambient humidity. And I want it to be quiet. Like that's a totally different, and maybe I want it to be more environmentally friendly. Like whatever experience you want to do in the room will impact some of these decisions quite a bit. It sounds like, 4 degrees centigrade difference, like not a big difference. Huge difference. Huge difference. Yeah. Terry. You're muted.
One thing specific to an original, 26 and 2 Bikram class with the 40-40 rule, what you also have to keep in mind is the heat index factor. Because 40 degrees Celsius and 40% humidity has a heat index of about, and I don't know this, it's about 120 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So 105 degrees, 40% humidity gives you a heat index of about 120. So if it is already, if you live like in Florida, where it already is super humid and the room is already at 80% humidity, if you have that heat at 105 degrees, your heat index is like over 150 degrees Fahrenheit, which is too fucking hot. So that's the other thing. And that's where like having the airflow and stuff comes in mind. So not only within like a hot studio is you have to look at where you're at in the part of the world and adjust accordingly.
Yeah. It's a huge impact. How you build a system. Our last studio's in middle northern Canada. It's minus 40 Celsius. It's minus, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit.
Well, 40 Celsius would be 105 degrees Fahrenheit. So maybe not quite minus 40 Celsius.
It's freezing's 32. What the fuck? Sorry, America, can we just switch to metric like the rest of the planet here? I mean, we're going to count in 5s and 10s. We're going to talk in whole numbers, freezes at 0. Like, it's so much easier.
I hear you. Anyway,
but whatever it is, you're going from minus 40 Celsius to plus 40 Celsius, an 80-degree Celsius change, like an enormous change. And when it's that cold, you have 0 humidity in the air. So you also have to bring the humidity all the way up. But then, yeah, to your point, if you're in the southern states, we were at a few, I remember being in Mobile, Alabama, great studio there at the time. And like, we started talking about the system or whatever, and I was like, what do you do with humidity? He's like, try to get it out.
Yeah.
Try to get all of it out of here.
Totally different story.
Yeah, totally
in
different game.
Pacific Northwest, we're bringing in humidifiers, and in South Florida, we're getting them out. We have.
Well, it also depends on your room, because I was in, outside of Boston, Massachusetts, Northeast drives, like, and I had to run based on how I sealed up my room and my floor. I had to run a dehumidifier even in the dead of winter. I had to run a dehumidifier year round. Even in the wintertime, once I figured out how to keep the heat in, my wall, like it'd be like my walls and mirrors would be sweating, right? So it really, you can build. I think the moral of this is there's no one size fits all, because you have so many variables. Like if you're like Carol's old studio, where she's right here, is in a strip mall, but there's people on either side of, correct? Whereas I was in the strip mall, I was at the very end, which meant I didn't have a building next to me, which had to help insulate from the outside, right? So all of these factors, come into play, which is why, even though it's expensive, if this is where beyond an HVAC person, you might want to actually hire, it would be either an industrial or mechanical engineer to come in and actually do an assessment of what you really need for your space. Because HVAC guys are great, but we're talking about someone who could come in and do the measurements and knows the formulas and the equations to actually figure this heat, this, and this, and say, okay, this is what you need.
Yeah.
And
well, and even how you would heat a studio,
right,
depends on, in my video, we talk about like, it's normal in British Columbia that you would heat with panels, you radiant heat, because you have BC Hydro, the hydropower company. So electricity is pretty cheap, actually. But if you're in Alberta, that it would cost you a fucking fortune to run that. So you run natural gas because natural gas there is cheap. So like even which that's a totally different room experience that you're doing one versus the other, just based off of what's, you know, more economical to run. So Nina, in your studio, did you have like environmentally within the space, what sort of controls would you have had as a teacher to be able to add or subtract humidity or up or down heat, or like, or was it just like a set thing? How'd you do it?
Not a set thing, and I don't think it's ever a set thing. It's one of those things that is, there's so many changing variables, even when you have it dialed for your specific, you know, environment. Like how many people are in the room? What time of day is it? Was there a class before? Like, so there's, you know, but when we did the build out, this was such a nightmare. And we had forced air at that time. And we opened in November in the Pacific Northwest. So it's like getting to be freezing, and we couldn't hold heat. And what we discovered was it was all leaking out of the ceiling, and nobody would take responsibility. They all said, well, I knew it had to get to this temperature, but nobody said we had to hold it. That was literally what my contractor said.
You're like, are you fucking kidding me?
What? And so we spent another whatever, like 30K to spray foam, insulate it. It was like, that's what we had to do. And then I added panels in addition, like in year 2, I think. So still to this day, when I go back and visit and take class, it's like the best fucking heat experience. I love it. So good.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many variables. So
I do have to say, Nina, you've traveled and practiced a lot as well. Well, all of us have actually, but I do have to say, when we were driving around, and even now flying to places practicing, it's really fascinating going to different studios, even not hot studios like Bikram, but like, you know, hot flow studio, or even studios. One of the trends that I don't think is talked about enough is the idea of a warm studio. There's a lot of studios that are like, they're not really hot yoga. They're not even calling themselves hot yoga, but they're running their class at 30. So like, I don't know, 80 Fahrenheit or something, or 85 or something, like pretty warm, because the class is just better at that heat for sure.
Right.
But even those, it's my point being, it is interesting going to different rooms because you realize how much of a variable that is. Like your experience of the class, I don't know what yours has been, Nina, it is drastically different one place to the next based on their room, which is a function of things like HVAC or the space or whatever.
Right.
Because I have places that are like, I can tell you right now which studios have the best. I'm like, I would specifically go to practice there because I love practicing in that room.
Right. Yeah, because and I do, in personal preference, I like a hot, juicy class, but I also appreciate fresh airflow. So
I was gonna say, that's the thing, is that again, going back in certain areas like New England and even in St. Louis in this wintertime, you do have to have the heat on. If we didn't have the heat on, the room would be like, you know, 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and it would be like cold yoga. So yeah, so you do need, I think some heat is good. But the other thing is, I think the biggest for me in studios where ones I love versus the ones I can't stand, it's not so much a factor of the heat, but airflow, air exchange. It's
oxygen.
Like oxygen, like you said, there's
CO2 levels.
I occasionally would go here just because I do love the heat, and I just have to like sort of really prepare myself mentally. But the first time I went there, it was it was Memorial Day weekend, right? Into May. So it was starting to get warm. And it was a Saturday morning, room was pretty full. They had the radiant heat panels. Their thing was they turned the fans off when class started. It was a completely sealed box. There were other than the door, there was no outside windows. And, you know, I don't know about you guys, but it's hard to go into yoga studio. It's like we say in church, in the sales training, when aren't you the yoga teacher? The same thing applies to when you're taking class. And when aren't you the studio director? The same thing applies to taking class. I'm counting the number of mats. I'm calculating what's going on. And I'm looking at the other practitioners. And I mean, particularly with the Bikram series, because you could tell, I could see the people that had really solid practices, right? You could tell, you just know. They had quite a few people are almost locked in standing bow, although their hands were sliding down their hand shouldn't, so that really didn't count. Anyway, when you have that level of practitioner by the floor series, over half the room was laying flat on their mats. And when you have like real serious people with that level of practice, it's like, because there's no more oxygen, it's all the CO2 accumulation.
Doesn't matter how
it doesn't matter how hot, if the humidity is good and all that, if you don't have some type of air filtration system, people are going to go down because of the lack of oxygen.
To me, that's embarrassing, honestly. I say it sounding a little bit rude because I am being a little bit rude. It's embarrassing because what if you're the first visit person who's out of shape and like that class? Let's stick on the thread because you brought it up of a Bikram class. Like it's a fucking powerful class as a beginning yogi. There's no contortionist level postures. There's nothing that requires outside of normal human balance at any age, right? It's all straight line linear movements other than 2 spine twists. Like there's basically, it's a great, and the heat keeps you, 3, you're right. But like it's such a great class as a beginner and the heat's protective, but not if it's like that. And there is sort of this double-edged sword that I see nowadays where there's a certain mentality of studios. It's not specific to Bikram. People want to shit on that. It is just across the board. The Vinyasa crews are like hardcore like this too, where there's a pride in the difficulty of the class.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is there's a fear to make the class hard. And I tell you straight up, this is one of those things, going back to Nina's quote, like, as a coach going in and you experience a studio that's leaning one way all the way or the other, I don't see that it works. It really sticks out if you're going to the studio fresh. If every class is just like impossibly fucking difficult and people are saying it's so hot all the time or the postures are so, like, you just don't get that much. You get a small group of people who love that, and then everyone else is doesn't they fear coming to practice. What a dumb thing to be scared to come into a yoga class, right? On the other side, it's like there's an apathy and indifference. Like, yeah, it feels nice. I kind of don't care. Like, I'm gonna go, and then those are the people that you lose to a CrossFit gym or a HIIT gym or Pilates or something, because they actually want to feel like they've done something.
We need a little intensity, but too good is no good.
Too good is no good. Carol, what was, did you have controls or anything like that? Did you, like any sort of special elements for the environment in your room?
I feel like, I know it's really, at the time, I felt like our system by the end was just Frankenstein together, because it's like we got it to where it would be 105, and then it's like, no, we need humidity, so you add this, and then like St. Louis can be humid and hot AF in the summer, and then in the winter, our front door would ice shut because like it was just, so we had to keep all of those things in mind. So then we were adding, in the winter, we had some black box, like infrared on the edges of the room to help with those areas to try to make it more even. And like, it was a lot to try to explain to somebody by the end. Like in my mind, I was like, I know exactly which levers to pull, but understanding, it was not like a one button thing. Like it was, I wish. Yeah. But I think that probably would have cost like 6 figures to have something like that.
Even if you had that, I don't know if well, maybe there is, like you said, if you had a 6 or 7 figure system, but can any system really like look at a room? And if you have a room that's a big box, it's like no furniture in it, nothing. It's like you're always going to have the hot, like typically by the windows is always going to be cooler, and by the doors, and then the front, and then, where the hot spots and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know if there is any perfect system. I will say, this is why I love my zebra floor. when I put my zebra floor in, that solved a lot, because for those who don't know, zebra floor is a little bit cushioned. I know a lot of people don't like it because there's seams in it, because they come in like 3x6 meter, base 3x6 foot. I actually had one in my basement. I had one left over. I brought it with me. And there's a little, although they don't rate it with an R value, which gives a heat value, let me tell you, it really does help.
It's a huge insulator.
It's a huge insulator, because
Yeah.
like particularly in the wintertime when we
It's
would
good for sound too.
yeah, it's good for
dampens
sound because it helps absorb. But like in the wintertime, when we'd get to the floor, it would be warm. It wouldn't be cold anymore. And like you would step, I love it. You go from the lobby, which is just like carpet over concrete, and you'd step into the hot room and immediately your feet would go, oh, this is so nice because the floor was warm. But yeah, so that's the other thing looking at. It's not just your system.
Yes,
but
the whole thing altogether.
Right.
I want to your comment, Terry, especially right now, if this is a money question, it's an investment question. You can solve this. You can build a room that is very automated with crazy CO2 sensors, that has the correct types of insulation and windows and whatever else, that will create a near quote perfect and standard environment for sure. And where's the ROI on it? Like, we spent definitely 100,000 on our room, probably 150 by the end. But like, to spend that's in my mind, that was really pushing it up there. And it was worth it for where we were. But you start spending 200,000 just on the yoga room. Like, we're not even talking about the other elements of a build out, because like if you put bathrooms in and it goes up fast. Cool, you have this nice spot, but like, how long before you get the ROI on that? Because the maintenance really slows that down. It's not like then you're done. Like, every year you got to stay on top of this stuff. A heater only lasts 10 years, 5 if it's not the right one and it's in a hard environment. So there is, I also love the, like, on the other end of the extreme, there's some hot studios here. They use propane floor heaters and they open a window. That's it. Now, obviously the environment here allows for that, but like,
here's a thought, and I've seen this at studios, is where a lot of this heat, where people are bitching and complaining about the heat, where that starts? With the owner and the teachers. Establishing, like, it's like, if you have a hot studio and you just like, you don't make the heat, yes, we're a Bikram studio, we're a hot studio, but you don't make the heat such a big issue. And the teachers are, oh, it's not hot enough, or it's not humid enough. And everybody, and I'm thinking,
just teach the fucking class.
Just teach the fucking class,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it's like, that starts with the owner and or a group of teachers being obsessed about, oh, it's got to be this, it's got to be that. And they then, of course, convey that to the students. And then the students are like, as opposed to, I think it's just like, I'm not a parent, but I would imagine if you as a parent make a big deal out of something, then your kid's going to pick up on that, versus if there's a problem and you're like, hey, we'll deal with it, no big deal, let's just keep going, then the kid's the same way, right? Is that a fair assessment for the two parents here? As opposed to, oh my God. Then of course the kids can be, oh my God. So, does that make sense?
Yeah. Didn't we all learn in teacher training that that's the thing you never talk about in the yoga? You never talk about the heat when you're teaching.
But yet people always do.
Yeah. Well, it's wherever, this is a marketing thing as well, right? Where attention goes, money flows.
Yeah.
But whatever you pay attention to, everyone pays attention to it. We talk about this in sales training too. If you don't want someone to push the red button, you don't say, don't push the red button. Well, what happens? Everyone looks at the red button. And if you're someone like me, younger me, I'm pushing that fucking red button. Like, I'm just waiting for you to not look, because now I have to push it to find out what goes on. If you don't want me to push the red button, you say, look at the green wall. Like, don't even bring it up. Yeah, that's a good point, because that could be with anything in any studio. Why is this even, that's the big thing from a yoga perspective too, is like, that's all external.
Yeah.
Your yoga practice is an internal practice. So you're coming in to be, it wasn't hot, it's too hot, like this, whatever, like that guy smelled, like, sure, that's all outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And at the same time, can I just report, I took a class yesterday and really beautiful, experienced teacher. It was a Bikram class, but she gave like a Tony Robbins speech in between sets of awkward, like a 10-minute one. I'm like, no, I didn't come here for that. That wasn't the agreement that we made when I signed up for this class. I didn't sign up to hear about your Joe Dispenza, which is fascinating, but then I would sign up for that class. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like it's breaking agreements. And I, as a teacher and I can't turn that part of my experience off. And I'm like, this is like, you've lost trust. I don't trust you now as the teacher. And actually, I considered, is this actually doing more damage to me than good? Because now I'm fucking irritated.
Right. And then it goes in a circle and you're like, but I can choose to not be irritated.
But I'm like, no, I'm putting this on her. This is her fault. She broke the agreement.
I'm passing this one.
Yes. So anyway, I do think that we do have some responsibilities to aim towards a medium, knowing that we're never going to please everyone. That's just the truth of it. It's always going to be too hot. It's always going to be too cold. Somebody's going to love the teacher. It's not going to resonate. That's fine. But let's have let's have an aim and then let go, right? We have to let go of if we get there or not, but let's have an aim at least.
And teach the class that's described on the schedule, and every teacher teach it approximately the same. So that one teacher's not doing this in the class that says A and they're teaching B, and then someone else is teaching C. Congruency in the schedule.
Yeah.
Have a plan.
Well, right. It's living up to Nina's point, it's living up to your promise more than anything else, right? Like, I think that the ego on the teaching side comes in, and then we start thinking that teachers think that they're special and start doing all sorts of other wonky stuff. And it's like, no, but what did you sell the person? Don't get me started on that rant. That happens here all the time. And you just have to roll with it, because it's more likely to go to a class here and get some random curveball of what you thought you were going into than it is to get the class that it says it is. But, to sort of sum this up, and then we can switch, Terry, I know you had a thing. It's like, what's the experience that you're offering? Most of the time, people are going to be inside the yoga room. That is the product. So the product is the class itself, like the sequencing, the teaching style, the whatever. Therefore, it's also the teacher, because that's a delivery method of that, and their sort of quality and engagement and how they can hold space. And then it's the space itself.
Physical environment.
What do I see? What do I smell? How does it feel? What's the arc of the class as I'm going through? How can I move through it or whatever, etc. Right down to the floor. Is there a window or not? Is it hot? Is it cold? How much oxygen, humidity? Like, all of these things are part of that. Are you misting smell into the ductwork? Or is it a non-smell studio? Right, difference of opinion. I would absolutely put smell in now. But so just, what is it? You have to decide, but that's, I think those are the largest components of what you would call in any other case, that's your product. So most of the yoga world, I think, somehow vaguely thinks about these things, but never defines them. And then the result is, what actually happens is dependent on things that it's like, how's the teacher feeling today? It's hotter or it's colder, or I did it I'm going to cheap out and get this rental mat instead of this one, even though I know that it's annoying as shit, but I don't care because I just wanted to save $200 this month or something on buying new rental mats or whatever. So having it defined, that's how you actually build brand. That's how you build a following. It's also how you test, right? Then if you're doing something and it's happening with consistency, and then it's not hitting, people don't like the product, that's a tough pill to swallow, but then at least you know. If it's all over the place, if every class is all over the place, how do you know? Do people like your yoga classes or not? Well, that's like asking do you like one of these 100 things? So, well, I like that one, but not that one. You know, you can't adjust anything. Well, there you go.
There you go.
We've got way more on that. Comment down below if you want more information or help with some specific element of your yoga room. As you can see, we will rant about it for a while. Terry, what else?
Well, you know, yesterday I loved your post that you put in the YC about the color thing, what we talk about in Slack. Yeah, we have all kinds of fun things going on in Slack. Just one of the things we also have, we have a channel called, is it a channel? Yeah, a channel called YC Life. And this is one where it has nothing to do with our coaching or anything like, it's just things that we're doing in our lives, right? So it's really kind of fun just to stay connected on that personal level. So yesterday Josh posted in, because I had to do a video for something about what makes a good marketing video. And he mentioned having a really strong hook and to be it's edutainment now is a thing where you're educating, but it's got to be some sort of an entertainment thing. Think a certain somebody coming down a golden escalator in 2016 of a time that we wish to forget. Anyway, so he was talking about that, you know, being controversial and being like this and da 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 da. And he made a comment, and then he said, and Terry's really pissed right now. And as soon as he said, I was like, yes, I'm pissed about this comment, the reaction that he was hoping for. For me, it was something that I'm clearly passionate about. And it was the opposite, and it was pretty visceral for me. And then and I've been thinking a lot about this because there's just so, particularly in the United States right now, with the election coming up and all the misinformation and disinformation and misdirection and redirection and this and that, blah, blah, blah. And thus, what conspiracy theories, this and that. And I'm like, enough. What if we just all decided we're not going to be on social media? End of story. What if, as a yoga studio or as a business, you just consciously chose, I'm not going to be present on social media, period, end of story. I'm going to find other ways to promote my business. Is it possible? So then I got to thinking about it. And we talked about this a long time ago. Josh said something about this a long time ago. Is in the 21st century, where we're at right now in this society, could you have a business, successful business, and not be on any form of social media? TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the ones out there, with possibly the exception of maybe YouTube. Because actually I saw a thing on an ad for YouTube as to advertise on YouTube, because YouTube is the #1 streaming platform in the world, actually.
It just passed. YouTube is now the most watched channel on TVs in Western culture.
So, I mean, it's like, okay, you're still getting some of that other noise out there. It's just that so there's my rant. It's like, what do you guys think about it? Is it possible?
Can you be counterculture?
Could you be, it's just like, you just totally say, I'm not even gonna do that. And I'm gonna choose to advertise my business and get new students in the door other ways. And then if you did that, and then I said something about websites, and then Carol said, well, people don't go to websites so much anymore. And so what do we do? How could you limit all of this stuff? I don't know. Is it possible? I'd like to hope, I'd like to think. So there's my rant. Mic drop. Okay, come on, guys.
Carol?
I just don't see it happening.
Well, you don't see it happening, but okay, I hear, all right, challenge thought, you don't see it happening, but could you do it?
And be successful?
Be successful. Right. Whether it happens or not is not, it's like, could you do it?
I think it would have to be something like extraordinary that people, maybe word of mouth is the way it spreads and it's exclusive and like, you know, but I think it would be very, very rare, like an exception to, you know, I don't know, a regular business. Like, I don't know. I have to think about it more, Terry. You know how I do.
Ina?
I need to sit with it for a while.
Yeah, I was thinking to define success. You know, what does that mean for you? Like,
Well, meaning that you're paying yourself, you're paying your staff, but yeah.
In a different industry, of plant medicine, which is also trending, nowadays, a friend of mine is going to a center, that doesn't advertise, and it's word of mouth, and you have to apply and be accepted, and they have zero social media, and it's actually, you sign an agreement that you're not gonna take photos, let alone post. So, that's a very different, obviously,
Yeah.
industry
Well,
offering and model.
the reason I asked it, because actually when I had my studio, yes, I had a Facebook page. I started an Instagram page like not too long before it sold, like, I don't know, 2019. So that came really late to the party. But I can tell you, this is how much money I spent on paid advertising.
Mhm.
It was all word of mouth referrals and, you know, through the website. So yes, I had a Facebook page, and yes, we posted on it. But, and I would occasionally boost posts and things like that, but I wasn't like actually advertising, actually doing paid advertising on any social media platform. And I did just fine. Now, of course, this was 5 years ago, almost now. But I've just always thought, are we doing it because that's the thing that everybody says we have to do? I don't know. You know, that's just, you're being.
I'm with Carol. I'm with Carol a little bit on this one. My gut, my knee-jerk reaction is no.
No, you
They
can't
only,
do it.
yeah, only can or can't. I don't know. I could see both. Like, my knee-jerk reaction is generally no, because one, it would be stupid for most people, just in that, like, if you think about it, like, you've got a fucking like, think about how we live right now. You have a computer in your hand with a 4K camera, and you can film something and push it out. And even if you're shit at social media and have no following, 100 people are going to see it. Like, if you ever look at, I've stood on a lot of stages doing presentations and taught some really big classes. 100 people is a lot of people.
Yeah.
You get to 300 people and you're like, holy shit, there's a lot of people up here. But like, those numbers don't sound exciting when you're talking about social media world. We talk in the thousands and millions. So then when you think about, like, when you get a 50,000 person eyeballs on a post, like, just for basically free, you know, the level of distribution and awareness on your business that's possible, it just, and the fact that that is, whether people try to say that they don't look there and don't do there and don't whatever else, but like, the vast majority of people absolutely do. It would be really hard starting from zero. It would be really hard to build without it. Like, it would just be like not leveraging such a powerful tool. On the other hand, to what Carol was suggesting, and this is the other reason why you wouldn't do it, but like, this would have to be a multi-year, like, marketing plan and sort of ethos, like the plant medicine placing that you're referring to too. It's like, you still need a list to market to. So how are you going to do that? Now, at some point, you hit this precipice point where it changes, and then it is word of mouth or whatever. So it's not that it's not, it's just like, it would be a slower build, but then once you got it going, in theory, it could be really cool, because you would have that feeling of it being like the speakeasy in New York, right? Like, in New York, there's no bar. You
Josh
don't
sent
go
me.
to a bar in New York, right? You go to the speakeasy behind the bar. Like, that's what you do. So it's the golden ticket. It's the Willy Wonka situation, where it's like, yeah, you can cut, like, there's only 10 spots in this one yoga studio and whatever, and you can only buy yearly membership, and you can only come in if you're referred by somebody else. There's other businesses. I have a buddy who ran a business for a decade before he sold it. That was like, a 7-figure entrepreneurial group, and they would go once a quarter and do like a 3-day trip together to sort of like do like a mastermind / get out of your normal environment thing or whatever. And it was exactly like that. The only way you could get into this thing is they did have a website. It was a one page with one thing, and it said apply, name, email. That's it. That's all you could do. And then they took control over everything else. And that worked. I mean, that was a 7-figure business as well. So I don't know how you get that started though. That'd be the hard part. Like in theory, it's there, and I think that you would get a lot of people that would be very on board with the counterculture.
This is my.
What about a hybrid? What about a hybrid in between? I was just thinking about REI did this, Mech in Canada did it, a few other places did it. They do it for Black Friday, where they're like no sales, and they actually like took their website down and just had a black box. It was just like, hey, like we're closed, and everyone's like go out in the wilderness or some message like that, right? And they did it across all their social media. That was a really smart marketing play for those businesses, especially because like they don't need to do deals on anything. They're already cheap. So, but what if you took that approach, but you did it for a year? You'd make like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 posts that are just a card that say like social media is a distraction. Like, come learn about yourself. You pre-schedule them for 365 days in front of you across all your social media. And then that's it. And you don't look at it. You don't talk about it. And you have a hard rule. People come into your studio and you're like, put your phone in that basket. Like, no phones in here, no pictures, don't post anything, nothing. I think so that would be interesting. Kind of play
social experiment. Yeah, to see if
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just like I said, it's just been on my mind. Because I was saying before we hop, even before you came on, Josh, it's like I've taken to like I find myself on this device more. And part of this is just me personally realizing, oh my gosh, I am sitting with this damn phone way more than I did a couple of years ago. And partly it might be because I live alone, right? And I do this every morning. I'm looking at the news, my news feed. I, try to limit that, and I'm responding to things for sure. But then I will randomly risk like YouTube shorts, and I'm like before, so it's like I'm personally not to be so connected. And I can only imagine if I was in high school these days, what that would be like.
Yeah, you're just doom scrolling. Whoop. Yeah, I feel like another video that I'll have coming out soon or whatever is comments on this, but there's an interesting, especially if you tend to be more neurodivergent. I relate to this personally on a heavy level, right? Like there's this interesting chemical thing that happens around doing work. And so if you talk about doing something and you tell someone you're going to do something, and you watch a video on doing something, you research it, you schedule it, to some extent, at some point, you actually get the dopamine, and then on the other side, a little bit of serotonin, but mostly dopamine hit from whatever doing that job is, but you haven't done anything. And that's partly, I think, as an adult, what social media can do. Because it's like, I'm never scrolling through and like watching dumb cat videos, or people talk about they still joke about, Carol, correct me if I'm wrong, but like people are still joking about TikTok being a thing that young kids go and dance on. Like maybe that's happening. That's not on my feed. I got 0 dance videos on my feed. Nothing. It's all entrepreneurship and philosophy and like really interesting stuff because it wants to keep me on the platform. It's figured out, like it's hacked my brain. A little bit of fishing is in there too.
Yeah.
But is there kid dance videos on your?
No, the algorithm gets you.
Yeah,
You know what you like. It's going to keep feeding you what you like. So.
Oh, and don't get my retired police officer sister starting talking about young kids dancing on TikTok. Because she said, you realize that there is some dude out there jerking off to your child dancing on TikTok right now.
We knew this roundup was going to go down the rabbit hole. Here we go.
And
right.
She's just like, she just is like ferocious when it comes to that kind of stuff. She's like, you have no idea what people are out there when your child is out there doing their little you know, you're talking about your young ones doing their little dances and stuff. She said, there are men out there right now doing nasty things, watching.
I would totally say and women, but we both know that's not true. It's bullshit. It's men.
Right.
Yeah.
Mostly men.
Fuck.
Yes.
God
okay.
damn.
So there's just
people are fuckety is the point. I think that Tim's making here. But look, the point being, not Terry's. Delete that part for a second. You can watch through. I can watch videos on philosophy and then I'll stop and I'll take notes or whatever else. But like, am I applying these things to my life? Like, it's giving me the sense of I'm doing something, but I'm not doing it. And so I feel like that's the interesting element right now in my mind around, you know, a lot of stuff that's online, and is it good or bad? Is it's giving this false sense of growth, this false sense of knowledge, when it's like, really, we relate it back to entrepreneurship, the level of confidence, the real like internal building that happens from actually doing work, actually doing the thing, tangibly getting a result is massively more powerful. It's just so much slower. I don't know how we started. Terry derailed my mind. There was some other point to tie in there, but that's what I see happening.
Well, this has been an interesting from HVAC to pedophilia, all in one roundup.
Okay, we're already down the rabbit hole. Have you guys been following this P. Diddy shit?
Oh, a little bit, yeah.
Sean Combs stuff, like, holy fuck. I don't know how this relates to yoga business. I think it relates to yoga business in this way. All industry has a dark side. Yoga fucking absolutely does. Like, real dark side. Total bullshit. You know, there are some yogis that I know firsthand that I hope go to jail forever. Period. And that's just a good example of like this huge public eye industry and this huge like juggernaut of a company and leader that's just, and you know what? It's not him. It's not the Sean Combs individually. It's the industry. It's the whole like that allowed it to happen. And that would the point was the point I was going to make was like, holy shit. I can't wait till heads get rolling off of this thing, because I think that it's going to ruin half of the music industry for most of us in our age bracket, because we're going to realize these guys are all fucked. They're all assholes. But doesn't necessarily mean the music's bad, but that's a different sort of conversation.
Yeah, that's
same thing in the yoga world. Like, it's the allowance of it's the fact that like, how did this take on for decades?
Yeah.
You know, and then now it's sort of coming out, and now everyone, the thing that I find fascinating is like, okay, finally someone's arrested, finally there's evidence that's being presented, finally charges are being laid, and then just people are just coming out of the woodwork, be like, oh, I'll tell the truth about whatever else. It's like, where the fuck were you the last 20 years?
Afraid.
Yeah, afraid, sure, but like, I don't know. That's the part I find fascinating. The yoga world has the same sort of shit.
I mean, well, you can think it's like throughout human history, actually. It's like behavior that seemed normal and everybody put up with it because it's like everybody does it and was an accepted thing. And then you move forward in time and all of a sudden somebody says, wait, and all of a sudden someone's like, wait, why should we put up with this?
Mm-hmm.
Whistleblower.
Right. And then that's when it's like somebody, yeah, whistleblower, exactly. It's like and that's been throughout human history, if you go back far enough.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it's hard to judge things in hindsight.
Yeah.
This is a bit of a tangent, but it is related. It's like, have you listened to Eminem's new album?
Mm-hmm.
So like, I wouldn't say I'm like super into Eminem or something, but his first two, his EP and LP came out when I was whatever, high school or middle school or whatever. And it was like, that was really influential at the time. And it sort of embodied energetically this angst of that age. And so I think that was a huge component of it. Not that long ago, the sort of younger age bracket now, especially on TikTok, caught on to all of Eminem's like original albums and the lyrics in it, and they tried to cancel him. Cancel culture like went after him real hard because he says terrible shit, like terrible, bad stuff. But it's taken out of context in time now, and so his whole new album is basically him trying to cancel himself. Like he says brutal shit, and then he immediately in the next sentence like throws it in the face of how, oh, I bet you this ends up on your TikTok later. Like he's just lighting up everyone. I love it. And it's a fascinating social experiment again.
Yeah.
In the yoga world, I think that like what's the practical down to earth part of this when we talk about the dark side of industry? This ties in with the counterculture of like, fuck it, I'm not going to be on social media. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. You're a business, but at the same time, and like there's a difference between core values and principles and ethics as a business versus yours personally. To say that they're separate is not true. They're absolutely intertwined, but they're not exactly the same thing either. And I think that is something to be careful with. That said, business leadership is the most important leadership of our time. This is why. Is because businesses are transformation vehicles. Like it's our distribution system. Like it or hate it, like that's realistically what it is. So individually, I think it's knowing your core values, embodying your core values, sticking up for those things. Like you got to fight for them sometimes. They'll be challenged. Keeping yourself out of the dark side of whatever industry you're in.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about, if you don't have your core values defined, or if you do and you want to take them from a piece
You
of
see how I
paper,
teed that up? Like it was just, I'm like,
I
Terry's
knew,
gonna
and I
smash
went
this
right
out of
for
the
it.
park right
If
now.
you really,
Here, Terry, let me just lob this to you.
yeah. So to Josh's point, many, of you probably already have your core values established. A, it's a good time to check and see, does this still apply? And B, if they're just words on paper, what do they actually mean? And how can you translate that into action within your business, right? To help you make decisions and things like that. And there is still time. We have our core values workshop tomorrow happening at 12:30 to 2:30 Central Time. There still is, obviously, since it's virtual, there's still plenty of space. If you'd like to sign up, please do so. You'll find all the information under events. You just click on the link and sign up. And again, if you decide, we've been talking to a couple people, we post about the summit. We still have a few spots left. If you sign up from the summit, the core values workshop is included in the summit as well. So if you're interested in that, just give us a shout and we'd be happy to talk to you about that.
Yeah, why would this, Carol, actually, I'd be curious on your thoughts on this. Nina, yours as well, because I think you have an intellectual background in this. It's like, if you have the clarity on these core values and like what your guiding principles are, then staying out of the weeds of the bullshit gets a lot easier real fast. Like if these are like these non-negotiable things and you really have confidence in them, then you don't find yourself somewhere you don't want to be, would be my thought.
And your decisions are a lot easier to make if you base them on those core values, whether it's a product that you want to add, like, does it align? Or is an employee, working out or not? Check your core values. Or a student, just makes decisions a lot easier.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Nina, anything to add?
She said it beautifully. That's exactly.
Just like, no, you got it.
Or highlight, bold. Yeah. And I think it's something that so many yoga studio owners just haven't even considered. So that's the first thing, like consider like, oh yeah, what are the values and how are my own personal values different from my business values and where's their overlap? And then having that really clearly defined just makes life so much easier moving down the road with all these decisions.
One of the things as you're saying that, Nina, that's coming to mind for me too, is the energetic cost of running a business.
Mm.
Like it's a hard thing to like tangibly measure, but the amount of time something takes is not the same thing as how much weight it puts on you. So if you don't have some of these guiding pieces, then when you come to a difficult decision, you're in turmoil. It weighs a lot. And like, that's the shit that wears you down. That's the shit that you're like, I don't want to go into my studio. I don't want to practice because Mysterious Carol is there and we're in a fight. You know, like that shouldn't even be a thing. That shouldn't even be, you should just, I guess the point is like, they actually are a protective mechanism in a positive way, not protective avoidant, protective clarity.
It helps you, yeah, it helps you with difficult decisions, so you're not kicking the can down the road because you're not sure what to do.
Right. Like, it's a simple question. I either do still believe in this or I don't. This is the business or it's not. Yes and yes. This sucks. I got to move forward. Yeah. Like you could, you know, as you get more confident as an entrepreneur, you approach it that way.
Very empowering. I think it's supportive.
Yeah. Well, and I like the idea in a lot of business difficulty of not only like, I see this being the healthiest way in most cases. There are some nuances to this, but is externalizing things. Like if Terry and I have to have a difficult conversation and I'm approaching it as me, Josh, and Terry, and it's us personally, and all of our history and traumas and experiences and opinions and everything are all part of that, that's a shitty conversation in business, almost always. If it's really clean and clear, these are the core values of the business. This is the mission. This is the vision. Here's what you're responsible for. All of that's laid out. We both agree to it. And then something's not happening. I'm not even talking about what I think about Terry or not. It doesn't fucking matter. All I'm doing is upholding to the standard that we've already agreed upon and has been set. So it's easy for me to know when I should have the conversation. And I can't be responsible for Terry's reaction, but in a best case scenario, another professional will also approach it that way and be like, well, it doesn't matter whether I like Josh or not. Like here's the rules of the game, sort of thing.
So sign up for the workshop, sign up for the summit. And sign up for a new website with Carol. If you really want to bring your website into modern day, she is the bomb. Shut
your social media down. Here's the recap of today. Add oxygen to your room. Make sure that you do the work, but don't worry about the outcome too much. And the thing that you're not looking at is the thing that you should be probably working on. Sign up for the core values workshop because that's the only way you're going to really know what you need to do. And then shut down all your social media and get Carol to build you a website. There you go.
Slay.
Watch out for pedophiles. Like we basically covered the full spectrum of yoga business reality. Right. Yeah. Boycott P. Diddy. What else do we put in here? Holy shit. We did good today.
Guacamole.
All right.
All right. We'll see you guys. Post any comments, reactions below. Yeah, it's been a good one. As always.
Have a great